College Football Podcast, joined as always by Clinton Boring. I am Ryan Sadkowiak, and for the first time in Inside the Pylon history, we have picks. A picks episode. It's Picks Thursday, Clinton. Week 0. There's no Big Ten action, but there is at least football to watch. I'm excited. How are you feeling about this?
Well, here's what I have to say to our picks. A little Thirsty Thursday pick action. We haven't had a Thirsty Thursday since multiple Thursdays before we did our preview show. So cheers to, you're all going to laugh at me, Ain't No Law with the Claw. A little White Claw, Wild Berry, Acai Smash. So cheers to Thursday, Ryan.
I'm not going to lie to you. That sounds disgusting.
It's actually not bad. I don't want a heavy beer right now because I'll probably go to bed right after this show, and I don't want to feel miserable. So, yeah, I'm excited. We were just talking about this before the show. We are 1 week out from the official opening of college football season, where Ryan and I will be live doing our first week 1 pick show while we watch football. So that could get entertaining, folks.
So if you guys follow us on Twitter, you've probably already seen some version of picks that Clinton and I have collaborated on. Whoever runs the NCAAF Nation 24/7 Twitter account, for some reason, invited us to do picks with them this year. I don't know how this happened, but that was pretty cool of them. We appreciate it.
Absolutely.
So those are just Clinton and I collaborating on picks. We'll maybe have the same picks today, maybe won't have the same picks today, but we'll do that in a little bit here. We're going to start today with some Heisman talk, going through just kind of the betting favorites right now, talking through some of that. There's a couple of Big Ten players on here. A couple. Mm-hmm. Hold on, trying to do math in my head. What we got? 3?
There are 3 in our coverage area.
3 in the top 10. So we'll talk about that a little bit. There's some Iowa related news we'll touch on first and foremost. As always, we are live on the YouTube channel at ITPCFB. You can find us live there every Sunday, Monday, and Thursday, usually in the evening. I don't know what are we doing on Sundays? Are we going early? Are we going late?
I think it depends on what's coming up on that Sunday. We're gonna have an early one, not this Sunday, but 2 Sundays, right? Because we're trying to prep for when you're out of town and I'm busy later in that week, and we're trying to squeeze our shows in for that first week of the NFL season.
Yeah, so that first week of September is going to be a little funky from us. So we'll talk about that a little bit next week. But typically we're going to be shooting at some point on Sunday and then Monday and Thursday evenings as well. If you'd rather find us the next morning in your podcast feed, regardless of when we end up shooting, those are still going to drop on Monday and Tuesday and Friday. You can find us Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your shows. We are at Inside the Pylon, a Midwest college football podcast there. Or if you want to eliminate all the guesswork, you can obviously just subscribe to those feeds, because then you'll get notified whenever an episode drops, or you can just follow us on Twitter at ITPCFB. We'll link those shows out so you will never run the risk of missing an episode. 3 times a week here until November.
Many weeks from now.
December, January, February.
End of January.
End of January. We're here. We made it.
Riding hot.
Yes, we are riding hot. So we are, before we get started with some Heisman talk today, the big news in Big Ten land was a self-imposed 1-game suspension for Kirk Ferentz, Iowa head coach, for recruiting violations in the recruitment of transfer quarterback Cade McNamara, allegedly because they made contact with him before he was officially in the portal, which I was just under the impression that's what everyone did.
Yeah, you brought that up right before the show and said if we didn't think that Notre Dame or had been in contact with Hartman and Leonard before they hopped in the portal, then we're foolish. And same thing with Ohio State and Caleb Downs. I know they did a self-imposed thing where they got a fine. They just reported it, so I assume that they avoid this Ryan Day suspended for 1-day game type action. But very interesting. I mean, it's Illinois State week 1. I can't envision Iowa's going to struggle much without Kirk Ferentz on the sideline.
The funny tweets were, watch Iowa's offense now be unencumbered with Kirk Ferentz not around the program.
Yep.
So that'll be fascinating to see because I don't think either of us expect Iowa to lose either way, but it'll be fascinating to see if they go ahead and drop 70 points now without Kirk. They're holding the offense up. So, no, I just kind of got a chuckle of that because we talked about it before the beginning of the show. These guys are going into the portal with do not contact tags. They're going into the portal with do not contact tags because they know exactly where they are going.
Yep.
Whether it's the program itself reaching directly out to the player, or an intermediary, a parent, a high school coach, someone who knows someone. Everyone does tampering. Did you see the Chuck Martin, the Miami head coach today? Someone was interviewing him, and he straight up said, Alabama stole our kicker. They tampered with
him.
Yeah. They took him. Everyone does it.
Yep.
Why Iowa's choosing to punish themselves, I don't know.
Listen, the NCAA has no spine. They're not going to do anything to you.
No.
All you have to do is push back and say, we're not going to balk at your threat. See you later.
Well, apparently, unless you're Michigan, then they're going to make it their life's mission to try to ruin your life.
Yeah, and yet we're still waiting on everything. So
allegedly,
we'll see whatever comes to fruition on that.
Allegedly.
The other news that Iowa dropped today is they officially named Caden McNamara the starter. On the day that they self-reported the violation for recruiting him illegally in the transfer portal.
Listen, if you're going to recruit the guy illegally, you better start him.
Yes, absolutely. That was pretty good.
So that's big news. Other quarterback news. Have we had an episode since Ohio State officially announced Will Howard? I don't think that was a surprise, but
I don't think we said it. No.
Miller Moss officially has been named the starter at USC again. I don't think either of us were surprised by that, but
TVD was officially named starter for Wisconsin.
Notre Dame did not announce Riley Leonard the starter, but somebody asked Marcus Freeman about it, and he's like, well, he's been running with the ones all preseason, so that was kind of a formal. Of course,
what did you think was going to happen?
Yeah, of course, this guy is our starter. I don't think we've seen any news on Northwestern unless I missed it.
No, I think just speculation that's going to be Mike Wright, but
I saw so Aiden Childs was named a captain at Michigan State, which feels like an admission that he is going to be their starting quarterback again. I don't know if there was an official announcement, but that'd be kind of weird to name your backup quarterback a captain.
Yep.
Not that any of us were surprised with that. And I can't think of any other battles off the top of my head.
No, I've talked to a person that's pretty close with Michigan on Twitter, and they said speculating Alex Orji week 1. Did not say obviously beyond that, but they said for week 1, they would bet Alex Orji.
Mm-hmm.
So again, nothing official, but just a word from a guy that tweets and talks about the program a ton. So we'll see how that goes there.
And that seems like it would be the ideal environment to start him against a group of 5 team. Though we've talked about Fresno State is no slouch. Again, I don't know Jeff Tedford late retirement for him in the summer, unfortunately, due to health reasons. So I don't anticipate Fresno State making that much of a game, regardless of who starts. So good segue to, well, I guess that's not really a good segue. We're just going to segue now to Heisman talk because I don't think either of us expect Alex Orji to be in the Heisman talk. Though if he is, Michigan's probably winning the national title this year. So
I concur.
So how we kind of did this is I got it written down here, Clinton. So these are betting odds, all of these, everything that we go through today, not a sponsor, could be, probably will never will be. They probably don't know we exist. From DraftKings Sportsbook, that's just because what's on my phone. So all the betting odds that you're seeing today for the Heisman, plus the game lines, the over-unders that we'll touch on here in a little bit, are all from DraftKings, just in case there's some discrepancy with what you've either bet on or what you've seen so far. So I wrote down, I think I ended up writing down the top 11 just because guy number 11 was going to be one of my dark horses. And I'm like, well, this is kind of sucky to just name a guy outside the top 10 as a dark horse. I wanted to go a little more off the board. So as we're kind of going through this, we'll, I guess we'll just go 1 to 10/11 here, and we can just kind of give our thoughts on each guy and whether or not we agree with the number, maybe.
I think it's fair.
Before we dig in, I guess I probably should have asked you this before we started. Are you kind of more or less familiar with what these numbers mean?
Somewhat. Obviously, the larger the number, the what they're saying is less likely they're going to win the Heisman. But if you bet on them and hit, you're going to make more money.
Bingo. Yes. So corresponding number is basically so So, like, first one, Dylan Gabriel is right now the betting favorite for the Heisman Trophy per DraftKings at plus 750, which essentially is if you bet $1, you win $7.50. Or if you bet $10, you win. Oh, fuck. I got to do math. $75. Yes. Yes. Don't make me do math. No, it's just $75. Just $75.
Okay.
Nobody fact check my math today. You can fact check things other than my math because I don't do math good. I don't do math good. So Dylan Gabriel betting favorite for the Heisman Trophy, and I think it was so fascinating when we were talking with Bliss a couple weeks ago, because I feel like the hype train for Dylan Gabriel's been in overdrive almost since he committed there. Like, it seems like a perfect fit, and he kind of put some water on that. I don't think he was as high on Gabriel as you or I were, and I think we were expecting him to kind of to wax poetic there about Dylan Gabriel. So, obviously, the Ducks are a trendy national title pick this year, definitely a trendy pick to win the Big Ten title. And for a lot of reasons, rightfully so, they should have a much improved defense on what was already a pretty good unit last year. They, even though they're losing a fair amount from last year, most notably, the last quarterback, Bo Nix, who was fantastic, Bucky Irving. Why can't I remember his name? The receiver, Troy Franklin. Troy Franklin. They retooled well in the portal, man. Evan Stewart's coming in. Gabriel's coming in. They got a backup in Dante Moore coming in. Loaded up on the line a little bit. Loaded up on the defensive side of the ball, headlined by cornerback Jabbar Muhammad. So it's kind of one of those things as we're going through and talking about these picks. Quarterback tends to be the trendy guy now. I think Devontae Smith was the last non-quarterback to win in 2020, and that took a COVID season where everything was all messed up, but he was phenomenal that year on an offense that was, 3 of the top 5 Heisman getters were on that offense. So just an unreal offensive unit. Last running back to win, was that Henry?
I think it was Derrick Henry.
In 2016, 2015? So,
and I was the one before him, Mark Ingram, both from Bama. I believe.
So quarterbacks are they tend to be the trendy pick, and the top 11 Heisman favorites are all quarterbacks. I probably should have written down.
It goes on the ones they have right now. I just count them. The top 23 are all quarterbacks.
There you go. So every quarterback in the top 25 is more of a Heisman favorite than the best running back. So there you go.
There are backups that are favorites higher than some players on teams.
Oh yeah.
Julian Sayin for Ohio State is plus 10,000 to win the Heisman.
Yep. Yes. So if you are listening to this and looking to make a bet, your smart money is on a quarterback, because history says that it will likely be a quarterback who does it. Yep. So just overall thoughts, Clinton, on Gabriel being the betting favorite right now for the Heisman.
I think it's fair. I think it's based off his own production and his past, plus what we saw Bo Nix do. I would think, and I'm not knocking Bo Nix. I like Bo Nix a lot, but I think when you look at Gabriel, probably a more successful past walking into Oregon than what Bo Nix had coming in from Auburn. Bo Nix was very up and down, great freshman year, inconsistent next year, and just not the best quality that you'd seen from him. We obviously have our questions with Gabriel that would immediately impact him, his injury. Can he stay healthy the whole season to be able to get that? Excuse me. And then a lot of people talk about how, for instance, Will Howard goes to Ohio State because Avery Johnson, who's also in this list, is going to step in to take his job. Let's not forget, Jackson Arnold is right behind Gabriel at Oklahoma for the reason for Gabriel to move on. So the shoe fits both feet here, but I like Gabriel, the weapons they have. It's a QB-friendly offense. What was the number again? I'm trying to remember. 40% of Bo Nix's passes were like under 5 yards last year or something to get them down the field. So if you've got the weapons, Gabriel doesn't have to throw down the field. I know Dale made the point that he doesn't have the strongest arm per se like Bo Nix. So that's going to be something where I feel like short and intermediate with the speed Oregon has is where he's going to live.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I think the conversation with Gabriel 2 versus Will Howard, and I think this was a really good point, and we'll get to Will Howard here in a second, but seeing Ohio State for whatever reason, man, our For You section on the Twitter account is a cesspool. It's just nonsense. It's been Penn State fans and West Virginia fans bickering at each other. It's Ohio State fans bickering at Michigan fans and vice versa. But I saw an account, it was talking about Will Howard and how he hasn't been, the most polished passer. And they were talking about Oregon's transfer to Bo Nix's transfer to Oregon and how he was able to ascend. If Bo Nix was good enough after 1 year at Oregon, he would have gone pro, guys. Like he had 2 years at Oregon, and like looking at
Penix at Washington.
And part of why like the excitement for Will Howard is, you think that, maybe he's got a little bit more left in the tank. Like he's not a completely finished product. He's certainly a toolsy quarterback with the size and the speed. But you look at a guy like Dylan Gabriel, whether it's, the arm strength or just his overall size, like this, we're not talking about an NFL prospect here. Like this is going to be a guy who someone's going to take maybe a late round flyer on, or is going to be an undrafted free agent. Like I actually don't even know if I could say he's as polished or as accomplished as a college quarterback as Sam Hartman was, but I look at him in a similar way to how I looked at the Sam Hartman transfer to Notre Dame last year, where, this is a college quarterback. Like this is not a guy with pro potential for, one reason or the other, whether it's, the offense he was running or just the physical attributes. So that's why I kind of like sometimes people talk about like NFL potential and try to equate it to college, or try to discredit a guy's college potential because he doesn't have an NFL future or whatever. It's like, it's two completely different sports. You can be a prolific college quarterback and never play it down in the NFL. So that's kind of the thing that I'm looking at with Dylan Gabriel, where you get a guy like Will Howard who's coming and playing a year at Ohio State because he wants to get better for the NFL. You got a guy like Dylan Gabriel who's playing college football because this is it for him. Maybe he makes it as a practice squad player or transitions to coaching, whatever, after goes pro in something other than sports. I don't know, but we're not talking about a guy with an unlimited NFL ceiling or really much of one. So fascinated to see what he does in the Oregon offense this year. I want to next, Clinton, I'm going to group this next 5 together just because it's a bunch of SEC guys and one ACC guy, and we don't really need to spend a lot of time at it. So we're looking here. This would be 2, 3, 4, 5, and tied for 6th. We have Carson Beck, quarterback from Georgia, at plus 800. Quinn Ewers, quarterback from Texas, at plus 1,000. Jackson Dart, quarterback from Ole Miss, at plus 1,400. Jalen Milroe, quarterback from Alabama, at plus 1,400. And Cam Ward, quarterback from Miami, at plus 1,500. Looking at those 5 guys there, Clinton, is there a surprise on that list, or is that like before you were kind of looking at the list, is that kind of did that kind of confirm what you thought it would end up looking like?
I think Jackson Dart might have surprised me a little bit. Like honestly, if you were to put me out in front of everyone, I might say Carson Beck should be number 1. And that's not a Georgia like bias thing. I think he's the best quarterback in college football. He's also a pro prospect. He's got a ton of talent, and arguably, as we quoted before with Pete Thamel saying, this is Georgia's best offensive line in his 20 years covering, at least on paper. We got to see it on the field. Ewers doesn't surprise me at all. Jalen Milroe and Cam Ward, not really surprises, but I think those are guys there. What are they sitting? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. I think those guys could sneak in there. Now, Cam Ward doesn't have a huge like rushing yard ability, but if you look at his touchdowns in rushing, he's a nice piece in the red zone. So he's going to throw for some, plus he's going to run for some. In Miami, I'm not as familiar with Miami's schedule, but they're going to have some good ACC games.
It's not a good schedule.
Not great?
No.
Well, Jalen Milroe then for Bama is one I would keep an eye on, because Bama's going to have matchups that could springboard him up if he has a big season. Even in a loss, because what Jaden Daniels won last year and LSU went 9-3. I mean, he had some prolific stats to back that. But Milroe combined with DeBoer, and DeBoer's ability to take what a quarterback does best and emphasize it. Milroe here out of the top 5, I think, is a really solid pick for you to take if you want to put some money on him.
So I have a point that I want to run by you. We just kind of like a segue in our discussion. But I think like from those 5 guys, looking at like Milroe, it's almost like an Alabama quarterback is going to be a preseason Heisman favorite until proven otherwise. So that, and obviously the DeBoer point's very valid, and I think that potentially elevates the passing ceiling of Jalen Milroe. But it definitely feels like quarterback Alabama, you're a preseason Heisman favorite until, they start to suck, which will probably never happen.
Never happen.
I think the Dart one surprised me just to see him so high. But if you think about it, you lose Judkins. Obviously, you still have Bennett in the backfield. That still should be a really good run team. but they have a ton at receiver that they brought in the portal. Some of the podcasts I've been listening to have been saying, hey, this might be the most talented wide receiver unit in the SEC. So given that they may have to rely on the pass a little bit more this year, certainly seems plausible, given that everyone expects Ole Miss to be good, that he would be up there. I think Cam Ward surprised me a little bit too, but this kind of leads into the point that I wanted to talk about before we kind of get into the second half of this top 10 here. I'm fascinated to see what ends up happening with Heisman voting, because in the past, at least in the 4-team era, it kind of felt like what the voting would boil down to was, are you the most valuable or the best offensive player on a playoff team?
Yep.
Now we have 12 of them. Mm-hmm. So I wonder, so typically unless you were, granted, I think the Heisman votes came in before the Pac-12 title game a couple years ago when USC lost. So USC was in a position to make the playoff when Caleb Williams won. So it's not like we're talking about last year's USC team when they were bad and Caleb Williams put up big numbers. But like, it always seems that you can pick like 4 to 6 teams that the Heisman Trophy is going to come from. But now with some of these teams, like, if Miami loses 2 games and they get into the playoffs as a 10 seed, but Cam Ward throws for, 4,200 yards and 40 touchdowns, is he going to get Heisman love? Because, Miami wouldn't have been a playoff team without him, even though they didn't maybe or maybe not won. Jesus Christ, that wasn't English. Whether or not they won the ACC or not, or like, Tennessee backs into the playoff because Nico throws, 12 touchdowns their last 3 games and he finishes with like 37 touchdowns on the season or something like that. Or, even like a team like Ole Miss, like, they get smoked by Georgia and someone else on their schedule, but they're still a 9 seed and Jackson Dart has a really good season. Do you have a thought on how you think this is going to kind of shake out? Are we still looking at Heisman's coming from one of the top 4 teams, or do you think that we might see some weird off the wall guy? Well, like a Big 12 quarterback, like, Avery Johnson has a fantastic year and Kansas State wins the Big 12 as, they're ranked 15 heading into championship weekend or something like that, but they win the championship game and get that first round bye.
I think the expanded playoff is going to help expand the Heisman chances to other teams. I think that is one fun part there, because maybe it gets some of these Heisman voters to open their eyes and look more than at just those 4 playoff teams.
Yeah.
Like, hey, we need to be paying attention to, you already said it, Avery Johnson, Jalen Daniels at Kansas. We know how valuable a player he is. There's no Bean there to back him up this year. If Daniels is healthy, Kansas might win the Big 12. And guess what? Unless they're like 7-5 Big 12 winner, or I guess you'd be 8-5 if you won the title. If they're 10-2 and 11-1, most of that's probably because of Jalen Daniels. He's going to be getting a lot of Heisman love.
Yep.
So I think it kind of opens the eyes for the voters to give at least a chance, or at least a broadened race throughout the entire season, versus where sometimes you kind of know who's going to win it. I take that back to like, what was it? Was it Troy Smith versus Brady Quinn?
Yeah.
That in 2006. We all knew Troy Smith was going to win it. Then he had the game against Michigan, and it was a landslide win. You knew who was going to win it before we even got to the ceremony. We knew Joe Burrow was going to win it. Yeah. Maybe this gets us a little more down to the wire feel. Maybe we've got 2 guys, super strong candidates, and we don't know. And we got to wait till the podium. They stand up there and announce the winner.
Now, I do think the one counterpoint to our argument there is I think the votes are still due after week 12 before championship weekend. So, but even with that too, like if you're a team like, Kansas, who's ranked 19, but is getting to the Big 12 title game because of Jalen Daniels, or, Utah or Arizona or Florida State or Miami or Clemson, some of these other teams that we're not expecting to be top 5 teams this year, but they're playing on championship weekend because someone on their offense was exceptional throughout the season. I'm fascinated to kind of see what Heisman voters do with that.
Do you think we should push the date back at all for votes?
Fuck yes. For Heisman? Absolutely. It should be after conference championship game weekend. And I don't know how feasible it is to tabulate all of those, because I don't remember what the schedule looks like now with like, and that's going to be like weird too, like with the Heisman ceremony, because now like in the past you had so much time between the playoff and the end of championship weekend, and now you have like 10 days. You really think coaches are going to let their quarterback go to New York to do the banquet
3 days?
Yeah, no, they're going to be on Zoom there or something like that.
Riley Leonard.
Yeah.
You're Notre Dame Irish or 5 seed. Here's your Heisman Trophy. Oh, thanks, guys. I really enjoy it.
Yeah,
they ain't standing on that stage anymore.
No, I don't think it should be after the playoff, because then it might as well just be a playoff MVP award. But if we're talking about how important conference championship games are to the overall postseason of the sport, that should have to count for something, because it's not like I get that there might be an instance where, you know, the third ranked Big Ten team has a guy who just absolutely carried the entire season, and that team is solely in the playoff because of them, and they're not getting that extra data point, and how that might be unfair to them. But that's kind of just my thought with it.
No, I think I would push it one more week, or whatever the week follows after the conference championship weekend, or maybe even after, because Notre Dame Army weekend is still going to stay the same, right? There's no other games with that weekend.
Navy Army.
Yeah, I said Notre Dame, didn't I? Navy and Army.
Yes, that is still going to be
so maybe
its own thing.
I don't know. Maybe you push it to the weekend after that, or the weekend with or something. So that way, if you ever have a Navy or an Army player in it, they get their one shot to that game. I don't know, but it shouldn't be right after week 12.
No, I agree.
I think if you got a lot of your Heisman guys are probably going to be playing on championship weekend, so they get one more time to shine in their biggest game of the season to lock up an automatic bye. I would want to see how you do with that. Like if it's Milroe and the SEC title and Carson Beck and they're the two favorites, let's see the championship game. Who carries their team to victory? I think that would be very intriguing to push it back at least a week or two.
So next on our list, I guess I probably should have just put this next guy in with the previous. So also at 1,500, we have Nico Iamaleava. Jesus, I'm never going to get that right.
I've heard Iamaleava as well.
Iamaleava, we'll go with that one. Quarterback from Tennessee. He's also plus 1,500. Tied with Cam Ward, as well as Will Howard, quarterback, Ohio State. Officially the starter. We mentioned that at the top of the show. Plus 1,500 as well. As the resident Ohio State fan, Clinton, what are your thoughts on that number for Will Howard?
I was going to give a quick thought on Nico real quick.
Sure.
If we're hearing the rumors that this kid might be like how Hendon Hooker was there, now he's young. Hendon Hooker was very experienced, but if he puts up Hendon Hooker stats for this Tennessee team, then he may be sitting top 5 this year, because Tennessee might be making a playoff push, because they would have been in the playoff that year. Even with that late loss to, who was their late loss to? South Carolina. South Carolina whipped them because Hooker got hurt. He tore his ACL.
Yep.
So I think that could be intriguing. I think he is looking real quick in the top 10. He's the youngest guy on the list in the top 10. Him and Avery Johnson would then, if Johnson's 11th or 12th there. As far as Will Howard, I think he's kind of in the space where he should be at the moment. I think I agree. I apply the same thing to Ohio State's quarterback, at least since Ryan Day's been there, even Urban, because of the way Urban used the quarterback run game. You're the starting Ohio State quarterback. You're probably getting top 10 Heisman hype to start the season. I think even Kyle McCord was there last year.
Yep.
And so you're getting that benefit of the doubt. But I think Howard could be a sneaky pick, man. Like there's the podcasts I'm listening to, like Caleb Downs was quoted as saying, I think he's excellent, or stuff like that. There's a lot of talk how of course, he's not going to be CJ Stroud. For any Ohio State fan or anyone outside of that, that's not what you're going to see. But his ability to utilize his legs and be effective, another guy who might steal some red zone touchdowns to bolster his stats. The guy has a Lamborghini. Keep it between the lines. You don't need to be a game manager, but if you're not trying to swerve outside the white lines and you're throwing picks all the time or having turnovers, then he's going to stand a good chance to be in New York at the end of the season. But I think at this time where he starts, what is he, 8th? I think, or tied for 6th, whatever you want to say.
Yep.
I think is perfectly fine where he is.
Yeah, and I think Ohio State's still one of those programs that, as long as Ryan Day is there, it's kind of the same thing as Alabama. your quarterback is going to be a preseason Heisman favorite until proven otherwise. There was a pretty compelling argument against that from last year with how Kyle McCord ended up shaking out. So I am fascinated to see the Will Howard experience this year because I think that's going to shape a lot about how some people think about Ryan Day as an offensive mind, not necessarily as a head coach. Because I think, I mean, they could, if we're being honest with each other, I feel like any of those 5 guys could start a quarterback this year, and it's really not going to affect them that much. Like I think they'd go at worst, well, maybe not against Michigan and Oregon, but against that schedule, they would at very least probably go 10-2, regardless of who was playing quarterback. But they don't. It's not. I don't think it's as dire for them this year to need that elite quarterback play that they got a couple years ago from C.J. Stroud that they did not get last year. Like last year, I mean, they should have lost to Notre Dame. They did lose to Michigan. Penn State was incapable of doing anything against their defense, so it's not like they were ever in danger of losing that game. I mean, I guess you can definitely make an argument this year that they're going to need to score against Oregon to win that game, but I'm not sure that they're really going to need to score a ton against Michigan to win that. Obviously,
maybe not Penn State either.
Maybe not Penn State either, and I reserve the right to be wrong about both of those teams. I mean, Drew Aller could come out look fantastic. Alex Orji or Davis Warren or Jack Tittle, whoever starts for Michigan by week 14, I guess technically by the 12th game of the season, could be looking pretty smooth. They could have that offensive operation figured out. But as we sit here at 9:35 p.m. on Thursday, August 22nd, I don't think that Ohio State's going to need to score a ton of points to beat Michigan this year. So it's just going to be fascinating to watch. They don't need them to be great. They need them to be serviceable. They need them to not turn the ball over. So I don't know that the smart money's necessarily on Will Howard. But I do have a dark horse Ohio State pick for you later there, Clinton. Stay tuned for that. Next up on the list. So we are now tied for 10th, tied for ninth. First, we have both of these guys are at plus 2,200. Garrett Nussmeier, quarterback from LSU. That one was a little bit surprising to me. I'm not going to lie, just because I think LSU is going to be fine this year. I think they're going to be a perfectly good team. I think they will certainly be in playoff contention. But between Alabama and Georgia and Texas and Ole Miss and maybe Tennessee. Like the 6th best team in the SEC. Again, not saying that that's bad by any stretch of the imagination, but I don't see it with the defense there. And obviously Garrett Nussmeier is a completely different quarterback than what Jaden Daniels was last year. So interesting pick. The one that kind of caught my eye was Riley Leonard, Notre Dame quarterback, also plus 2,200. I don't know how I feel about that number. I wouldn't touch it. Not with a 10-foot pole. I feel like I've heard enough out of Mike Denbrock's mouth this fall camp to think that they might try to do some of the Jaden Daniels stuff with him, where they just kind of let him freelance and run around like a lunatic. And if they do that, we're talking about a guy who could push 700, 800, 900 rushing yards. He's not as polished of a passer as Jaden Daniels is. So they're going to have to fix some accuracy issues. They're obviously going to need somebody to step up in the receiver room because Jaden Daniels had absolute weapons out there, out wide. So that was a big reason for his success, was not only having Brian Thomas Jr. and Malik Neighbors to catch the ball, but the fact that defenses had to account for that also opened up the running game for him a little bit. Obviously, lightning fast dude, able to capitalize when he had space. But I don't think Riley Leonard is even just like sneaky athletic. I think he's one of the best athletes on this Notre Dame team. Like the dude, have you seen, I don't know why you would have ever seen the dude's basketball highlights, but he can get up. Like this dude can dunk. He's fast. Notre Dame I know the trope about Notre Dame is they're slow because they're a northern team and the southern guys are the fast ones, yada, yada, yada. But they have a lot of athletes on this defense, and he's been running around them in practice, getting to the end zone. I mean, we could be talking about for him close to 4,000 total yards and 40 total touchdowns between the rush and the pass this year if things go well for the Irish. So if they're a playoff, this feels like one of those, if they're a playoff team, what do Heisman voters do with that? And it depends. A lot rides on this first game against Texas A&M because we talked about it once or twice last week. If they beat A&M, I think they're going 12-0. If they lose to A&M, probably 10-2, but should probably still be a playoff team. So if you're sneaking into the back end of the playoff, I don't know how much Heisman love you're going to get regardless of how good you are. But if Notre Dame is 12-0, 11-1 and hosting a playoff game, and Riley Leonard's a big reason why, there's going to be a ton of buzz for him.
I've already said, I don't know when we said it, but I think I've said it twice on here. Riley Leonard, folks, will be in New York for the Heisman Trophy presentation. I'm not saying he's going to win it, but I think he's going to be in New York. First one since Manti Te'o. I think his legs are going to be a huge factor for him, especially week one, especially as you and I have already talked about. We don't know what's happening with the offensive line, especially at tackle. When you know A&M, if they can get edge pressure, guess what? They don't have to blitz, which is going to make passing a living nightmare. So Leonard's going to have to get out of the pocket, force the defenders to move with him, obviously hope his receivers get open, but he might have to make some hero plays with his legs to save this game and pull it out the way he did against Clemson last year.
The way he literally almost did against Notre Dame last year. He had like 80 rushing yards in the second half of that game.
Yep. So you're pairing him with Denbrock, which I love. You're exactly right. He's not the same as Jaden Daniels, but he is the same offensive coordinator that had Jaden Daniels. Not the same playmakers, but I'm going to say that Leonard's more durable, but Leonard's the one with the small injury history, and Daniels I don't think was.
No.
But he's bigger. He's going to handle those hits a little better. My question then is he going to incite some more of that contact? Like he's going to want to lay the boom versus getting out of bounds. And so that could, if that's Cam Newton style, he's going to take a beating through the whole season. And this is a longer season than when Cam Newton played. So he's got to be able to survive that. And then we flip back to just Will Howard. Same thing with Will Howard. You have to take care of your body to get through this season. And we flip back over to Garrett Nussmeier. I don't know a whole lot about him. Isn't this the kid that Brian Kelly danced with in that weird video when he committed?
No, this was person. I think that was a tight end who might have transferred already, maybe?
Yeah, I think whoever was in the video might have been the one that transferred. Anyways, I wonder if Nussmeier's just getting the carryover from what Denbrock and Daniels did last year.
Could be.
I'm not saying the kid may not. Hell, he might go out and win the Heisman. If he's a Heisman front runner, LSU's probably only losing one game. And they're going to the playoff and maybe the SEC title.
Yep.
They still have Kyron Lacey, I think is his first name. They got another receiver I'm blanking on that is supposedly popping off in practice right now. That might be your Brian Thomas combo, or flip it. Maybe Lacey's Thomas and the other kid is Malik Neighbors. So they got weapons. We know they got a great offensive line.
Yep.
He just has to take care of the ball.
Yes.
But I'm a big fan of Riley Leonard to the Heisman podium this year, or the Heisman in New York this year, and we'll see what happens with him.
So those are your top 10 guys per DraftKings. If you were to pick one of those, if you were to place a $10 wager on one of those guys, Clinton, who would it be?
I'm going to go Jalen Milroe.
Nice. And this is like this is one of those things too, where it's like sometimes you see some of these betting lines where it's like to win the Big Ten title, and it's like Georgia plus 100. It's like, why are you even betting on that? Like, even if you're betting on Dylan Gabriel, I mean, you put $10 down, get 75 back. I'm not a big bettor. That's still pretty good return on investment there. So it's not like it's one of those things where it's like, well, why even put money on this guy because you're barely getting any back.
What about you?
Oh, I think I'd probably have to go Carson back.
I think it's a good chance.
I think Georgia's going to be really good this year. I think he's going to get a boost from that. I don't remember when we talked about this. I don't think I conceptualized how good he was last year. I thought he was just like this really talented guy who they didn't really ask to do a whole lot. And then I saw his stats at the end of the season. I'm like, oh, Jesus. Okay. So if he has a pretty similar year to that again this year, I think
he's accurate.
Yes. Very accurate.
Finds his guys. So.
And he will certainly have, Georgia's plays a pretty tough schedule starting week one, man. He's got the stage to himself for the noon game against a ranked Clemson team, which should be a pretty good defense. So he's got a chance to build a little bit of a lead here right out of the gate.
Well, that's one, before we move on, that's the one thing I want to say. It's not always about who your coach is or your OC is. You have to have the opportunities to show out. No one's going to care if you're beating Marshall every week. There are guys at the group of 5 level that put up way bigger stats than who probably our Heisman winner is going to be. It's about the difficulty of the games and what you do in those. And Georgia, Bama, Texas, and Ole Miss are going to have some great opportunities. Will Howard and Dylan Gabriel will as well, because the Big Ten is the perceived second best conference. But that maybe is where some of our Big 12 and ACC guys get knocks.
Yep.
Because we're not perceiving their games as challenging or as many opportunities to go out and seize the moment. So that was just kind of a piece I was thinking about today as I was trying to come up with some dark horses. And like, where is this guy's opportunity to be able to get himself into this talk, even just to get to New York? I'm going to be thrilled if one of my dark horses just gets to New York. I would be happy with that.
Yeah, and you think too, like 2 years ago, I don't remember what he was before that Notre Dame game, but Caleb Williams was already the betting Heisman favorite, but it wasn't insurmountable. He might have been like minus 260 or something like that. So it's one of those, it's like, why are you putting money on it? Because you're not getting a whole lot back. But after that Notre Dame game, when he went just absolute crazy Superman mode, running around in the backfield, avoiding sacks, extending plays, making incredible throws, he was like minus 3,000 after that game. That game locked it up for him. So
you guys should have seen my text messages from Ryan during that game.
I don't think you have to see the text messages. I'm pretty sure that you could probably just go back and find my tweets about it. I don't think I was very happy. No, nothing will be worse than the ACC championship game in 2020.
Oh, that was a Notre Dame temporarily joined the ACC. Yes.
I may or may not have broke my phone that night. I needed a new one anyway, so it was fine. But I had a couple too many Christmas ales. That's my excuse.
Are you ready for our dark horses?
Yeah, let's. I wrote a good number down just because I kept going through the list, and I'm like, oh, I like this number. I like this number. So I got a couple. If you want to just alternate here, we can kind of go through like that.
Go ahead and kick us off.
So the guy I mentioned, and we kind of alluded to him once or twice, is Avery Johnson is just outside the top 10 at plus 2,500, but I feel like there's a lot of hype around him. I feel like there's a lot of hype around Kansas State. I don't know how good they're going to be, if it's going to be like a 10-2 Big 12 title game appearance or, 11-1. But if they're a team that's all like kind of knocking on the back half of that top 10 heading into championship game weekend, and he's a big reason why, I feel like there's going to be a lot of steam on him as kind of a guy who, hey, maybe he's going to get some Heisman love here.
Absolutely. Numero uno for me, Kyron Drones, quarterback, Virginia Tech. And here we are. We're both starting off with quarterbacks. As we said, might as well be a quarterback award.
Yes.
Drones is getting a lot of hype this year. Had a great year last year, 2,085 yards passing, 17 TDs to only 3 picks, 818 yards on the ground with 5 TDs. So that's a pretty favorable schedule this year for Virginia Tech. Especially to be an ACC dark horse. They are my dark horse contender to win this conference. They have 3 matchups, really, though, to show out. You get Rutgers and Miami back-to-back, and then you get Clemson November 9th. Those are going to be your marquee games. If he performs well in those, and let's say they just go 2-1, and then the rest of the year that allows them to finish 10-2, I think he's in the discussion. I feel like he's going to be a guy that's looking at about 4,000 total yards this season between passing and rushing. And if he can get 35 plus TDs, he's going to be right there at the end. Again, as long as their record is 10-2 or better, I think he's got a shot.
I got a couple running backs here to wrap us up, just to spice it up a little bit. At plus 7,500, I have Quinshon Judkins.
I knew that's who you were going to go with.
So my thought with him is he's sharing a backfield with a guy who has an injury history. So there is a likelihood that Travion Henderson, if he doesn't outright miss time because he's injured, that they're holding him out, load managing him to make sure he does not get hurt as the season goes along. Yeah, especially given that Ohio State does not have the deepest running back room, and Quinshon Judkins is a guy who's shown the last 2 years that he can carry a higher volume. Maybe he gets a little more care, a little more love with that. They feed him the ball a little bit more. I don't know how, given the Chip Kelly factor is fascinating to me, because I feel like that almost makes it more likely that an Ohio State running back will be kind of the feature piece as opposed to the quarterback or wide receiver. There's good wide receivers on this team, no doubt, but Egbuka is a guy who was hurt a lot last year. I don't know that he's necessarily has the overall the talent profile to be a Devontae Smith Heisman type guy. Jeremiah Smith probably does. I just don't think he does it this year. So it'll be fascinating to see kind of how the receptions kind of pan themselves out. But I think if there's a guy on the Ohio State offense that I would put $5 behind, it would probably be Judkins. That's a good number to get him at.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. My next guy. Did you say your other back is also at plus 7,500?
No.
Okay. Cool. Then I'm going to take my guy. I said Ollie Gordon.
Nice.
Set 1,732 yards rushing last year, 21 TDs, 330 receiving with 1 TD. Now, going to have to boost his receiving game a little bit. Oklahoma State's going to have to deal with people know he's the centerpiece, and they're going to come after him just the same way with Kyle Monungai that I talked about on Twitter today. But they bring back all of their offensive line. What'd we say? They bring back 18 starters from this team from the year ago, and they're one of the favorites to win the Big 12. He's a supreme talent. Now, this is barring for some reason he has to face any type of suspension for his DUI. It doesn't sound like he's going to, but if he gets all of his games in and they're in the Big 12 championship, he's going to be the reason they're there. And I think he's the most likely running back to be in the Heisman conversation.
I have next Donovan Edwards at plus 9,000. I don't know. So I highlighted this number because of how big it is, and because given what we don't know about Michigan's offense, I feel like they're going to have to rely on him a lot this year. Him and Loveland, tight end's not winning the Heisman Trophy, so we're not even going to entertain that thought. But given what the quarterback situation looks like right now, at least early in the season, I feel like they're going to have to rely on him a lot if they're going to win some games against Texas, notably USC as well. He's got the catching profile. Like, he's good out of the backfield. He's going to be the lead back. You know, he doesn't have Corum potentially hawking touchdowns anymore. And I know that when we talked to Anthony Broom a couple weeks ago, he said Khalil Mullins is looking kind of like that Hassan Haskins type role. So that has me a little nervous that maybe he becomes the touchdown hawk there. But for Donovan Edwards on a team that a lot of people are still talking about as a playoff team, if the offense is good enough to get him there this year, it's going to be him taking a huge step forward and making that ascent.
I concur. If you get anything like what he did in his prime performances of Washington,
sure.
We heard Broom tell it to us right here on the show. When he gets his consistent, repeated carries, that's when he has his best games. Let's put up or shut up time now, Don, because you're going to get it this year. So my last guy is going to be plus 25,000 Haynes King. No, I'm just kidding. I'm going to go back up the list. Brady Cook. I mentioned him a while ago. Another favorable schedule. He gets 4 chances to prove himself at A&M, at Bama, home against Auburn, and home against Oklahoma. Everyone may laugh about Auburn. They're a sneaky team. They got a good coach, and they should have beaten Alabama barring a miracle last year. It's not a team to be joked with. I know Peyton Thorne, we might laugh at quarterback, but it's still going to be a challenge. He's got a good rushing ability. He had 29 total touchdowns last year, 8 on the ground. Poor Peyton Thorne.
That's me laughing at Peyton Thorne.
But yeah, I think the favorable schedule builds up his stats. I think Cook might push 4,000 yards passing this year. Luther Burden. I damn near want to put Luther Burden in here to avoid another quarterback because he's their all-world asset on offense. I just think you got to be Devonta Smith to win it as a wide receiver, man. It's so hard. He would have to do everything for them. And even then, if he would, Brady Cook's not Mac Jones. Brady Cook's going to be right behind him or next to him vying for the Heisman spot, and it would go to the quarterback. So Brady Cook was my last one.
I like that pick. I need to make a sound for these picks. We'll just do some. Woo! Those are your Heisman picks presented by nobody. They're from Draft.
I think
please sponsor the podcast.
I think we should try to find a cool little intro sound as we get excited for every week before we do our pick'ems. Like,
Oh,
if you
that's what
remember,
I'm
like this,
talking about. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Maybe I'll when I'm bored on Sunday, I'll try to make something.
like, because doesn't the Solid Verbal, they do like a countdown into their like picks and
Yep.
all that, and I don't know if
Mhm.
until Saturday they might have just did like a quick sound like to slide into it,
Something like that.
but we need something to intro our picks for the season. So
Yes.
before we do our pick'ems, Ryan, I promised the people today, and this doesn't need to be a 30-minute talk.
Oh, no.
I promised them on Twitter that you would drop your hot take that you told me about the other day.
What was the hot take? I literally have no recollection of this. Oh, yeah. So, so I don't remember when I thought about this. This was probably like a week and a half ago. It just randomly popped into my head that all the talk about preseason, what preseason top 10 team is going to fall out of the top 10 and finish unranked. It happens every year. And I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, are we sure that Texas is going to be good this year? Because they lost a lot. They lost a lot out wide. They lost a lot in the middle of that defense. And then that's a tough schedule moving to the SEC. You're not playing, no offense to the Big 12, you're not playing Big 12 cupcakes anymore. Even, kind of the dogs in the SEC, those bottom barrel teams, they still got good players on them. Like, you look at like the recruiting rankings. I mean, you have like 10 SEC teams in the top 25. There's some good players on even these bad teams. Teams that are certainly capable of jumping up and stinging a team that has a penchant, a history of losing to teams it has no business losing to. We had a year last year, a reprieve from Texas losing to a crappy Kansas team or somebody else they have no business losing to. And then I was reading Stuart Mandell's mailbag in The Athletic, and someone asked him the same question. And he said, honestly, if Texas went 7-5 this year, I'm not expecting it. It wouldn't shock me. I'm like, there goes my original thought. Somebody else said it out loud before I did.
I got the schedule right here. Michigan, September 7th. Oklahoma, October 12th. And as someone pointed out, even though Texas made the semifinal last year, Oklahoma's won most of the more recent matchups in that contest.
Yep.
Georgia, October 19th.
Hell, Oklahoma almost beat them last year.
Yeah. You get Florida, November 9th. And Florida gets belittled because of their schedule. They have a lot of talent on that team. And Graham Mertz, for as much of a dive he took off at Wisconsin, people forgot about him. He had a good year last year. That's not going to be easy. I don't know what Arkansas is going to be. Sam Pittman's fighting for his job. So that's a near November. He might already be canned at this point. But Kentucky, I don't think Kentucky's a pushover. And then you end with A&M, a matchup that has been itching to be had. How long has A&M been out of the Big 12 and away from Texas since 2011?
Something like that. It's been over a decade.
Yeah, so they're itching for you, and they're going to come in swinging. Texas, they're not going to lose all those, but they can have 4 losses at the end of the year. You'd be 8-4, and they ain't doing jack shit with the playoff at that point. The SEC is not going to save you there, and I wouldn't be surprised. They had one big year. Yes, I'm excited. College football's better when Texas is good, but I wouldn't push all my chips into the middle like many people are saying Texas is in the SEC championship. And with your comment, now you've given me pause that I feel like I got to go back and look at my playoff prediction here.
Oh, I know.
I really think this through. Like, do I think Texas is in? Where do I think they are if they are in? Like, how do I decide that? Do I trust Quinn Ewers enough to take the next step to cover up for the loss of Adonai Mitchell and then Xavier Worthy?
Yep.
You're down Banks, but you're also now down 2 of your backs that were supposed to be lead backs this year. Can your O-line hold up to an whole SEC schedule, not just one against Bama? I don't know. It's interesting. It was a good point by you.
It's not. Everyone, if you listen to our top 25 show the other day, you already know what my playoff is because that's just how I ranked it. I am not going to go back and change Texas to be out of it because I still think more likely than not they will be good again. But I don't think it's a given, and it certainly would not surprise me if we're going into that A&M game if both of those teams are ranked similarly because they're both sitting at 8-3 or whatever.
Yep.
That's all. That was my take. I don't think we have any Texas listeners, so I'm sure I won't get any death threats on Twitter. But anyway, picks of the week, week 0. Again, these lines are from the DraftKings Sportsbook. First game of the 2024 season, Clinton, an ACC showdown. Georgia Tech, the Yellow Jackets, taking on Florida State in Dublin, Ireland, the Aer Lingus College Football Classic. This line has moved down I don't know if fairly substantially is the right word, but I think it might have opened. It was either 13 or 14 when it opened. I got it, Georgia Tech at plus 12 earlier this week. It's down now to Florida State minus 10.5, over under 55.5 points. Clinton, what way are you leaning in this game?
Do you want me as far as the over-under? Do you want me as the...
Give me both. Give me both.
I think they're going to go over 55.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think it's just hard for defenses, especially week 0, let alone week 1, to come in and be prepared. And Haynes King is a baller, and Florida State's replacing a lot. When we made our picks on that with the, it was the NCAA Football Nation.
Yep.
We got Georgia Tech, I think, at 12.5 or 12. Yep. I like that better.
Yep.
It's still double digits.
Yep.
I'm still going to roll Georgia Tech here.
Yeah, I agree on the over. I parlayed. I think I have Georgia Tech plus 12.5 and over. I don't know if it was 55.5 or 56, but Georgia Tech did not play defense last year. Is whatever you think of DJU, they still have enough skill talent. They should be able to exploit that. But also Georgia Tech has a really good offense. Mm-hmm. And even though Florida State's defense should once again be really good this year, I don't know, given what they lost and what they kind of have coming in the portal, how cohesive they'll be to start. Mm-hmm. So I think there's points to be had for Georgia Tech there. I agree with you. I think I'd still lean Georgia Tech at plus 10.5. If this came down under 10, I'd probably switch it to Florida State. But I could see, I don't know, man. That's too many points for a week 0 game against 2 Power 5 teams. That's my opinion.
Wait, did you say you went over or under on the 55?
I go over. I got over.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Next, so we're both Georgia Tech on that one. Next, we have Montana State, one of the best teams in the FCS. I think they were 4th in the preseason poll. Mm-hmm. They are playing New Mexico. The FCS team is the heavy favorite here. 13. It's now up. I think when we picked this, we were at 9.5. It is up to Montana State minus 13.5.
Wow.
Over under 54.5. That is a lot of points.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel great about an FCS team beating an FBS team by 2 touchdowns, but the fact that this line has moved so much over the last couple of days, that's leading me to kind of stick with Montana State here. I'm not going to lie, I don't know enough about either team. I think we both heard that or read that New Mexico is probably going to be one of the worst teams in FBS this year. So Montana State outright, I think I probably did actually just bet this. So we're going to stick with it. Montana State minus 13.5. And I'll say under. I don't think New Mexico State's going to score a whole lot in this game.
So two factors here. New Mexico play at a higher sea level. So Montana State has to come into play to that. They're obviously the FCS opponent, so in theory, the lesser. But not only are they 4th ranked, I believe I read or heard they were essentially the most powerful offense in the FCS last year, like most explosive.
Okay.
Things like that. So I'm going to ride. I don't care about elevation. If you're telling me one of the teams is going to be the worst team in the FBS this year, I think an FCS team is going to bite them. This isn't like they're walking in to play Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
So give me Montana State. What was the over-under?
54.5.
I'm going to go under.
Oh, stop copying my picks.
Because I didn't even remember what you picked, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I said under too. Next, we have SMU playing Nevada. This line opened, I think it was SMU minus 28. It's down to minus 24.5, over under 55.5. Speaking of teams that probably should be really bad this year, I think similar thought on Nevada as they are going to be one of the worst teams in FBS, and I'm fairly high on SMU this year. 24.5 is a lot. Like, you run the risk of getting some weird defensive special teams touchdowns or a late score that kind of screws you on that. But I could see this one being like a 59-0 game. So we're going SMU and we're going to go the over.
SMU, I'm taking you there. I think they're going to railroad Nevada. I think they're going to have a great intro into the ACC with this. I think I read or heard a stat last year that, I don't know if it was obviously just FCS opponents, but lower opponents that SMU faced, they averaged a win by like 28 points or more. They dog walked everybody that was a way lesser opponent than them. So I'm going SMU there. I think I'm going to go over the over because I think SMU is going to dog walk Nevada. So,
we probably won't agree every week, but when we talked about these picks, we agreed to them pretty quickly because we're consensusing for this pick'em thing that we're doing.
Mm-hmm. So these are pretty. We didn't have the Hawaii one on there. If you're going to throw the Hawaii one in,
we did not have the Hawaii one on here. Even though it is football on week 0, I will not be staying up beyond midnight to watch this game. They play Delaware State. Hawaii is a 40-point favorite over under 56.5. I think I'm still going Hawaii. Have you heard about the Delaware State travel situation?
Yeah, I was just about to tell you about it if you hadn't. So I'm definitely taking Hawaii.
Yeah, Delaware State missed their flight to Hawaii
because so they had their bus got delayed.
Yep.
It didn't get them there on time.
So they had to take like 2 separate commercial flights to get to Hawaii, and that's a long ass flight, man. That's like 10 hours, I think. Yeah. They said. So they're going to be feeling pretty haggard. I don't know how good. I think Hawaii's on the up and up compared to what they were a couple years ago.
Timmy Chang,
leading
passer, is their head coach now.
Yes. So we're going to go, you know what? We're going to go Delaware State plus 40. I don't know if Hawaii's capable of covering a 40-point spread. So we're going to take the 40 points and I'll take the over.
I'm taking Hawaii. And what was the over?
56.5.
I'm going to take the over. On that.
All right.
Now, are we planning each week we want to do just the like the betting line there where it's -12 or whatever and the over under, or are we just going to do one or of them?
We could probably just do the betting. I don't know. We'll see. I think we could
do it on some of them.
Yeah, and I think maybe once we get into Big Ten play, when some of these teams start playing each other, then we can maybe it'd be a little easier. But when in the non-con, when we're picking freaking 19 games, that might be a little tougher.
Yeah.
So as we kind of go through this picks show in the future, we're just going to stick with the Big Ten and Notre Dame picks. We're not going to pick the MAC. We're not going to pick anyone else just because we'll be here forever picking. We're not picking every game. Keep it related. But that's more or less kind of how we'll go through. So we will be back with you guys.
And then we said we would give them, if there's a few big national games, we'll throw you.
Yeah, if there's anything. Yeah, if there's anything.
We're not going to go through every national game. Maybe 3 at most. We'll give you.
Yeah. So we'll be back with you guys at some point on Sunday. Don't know the exact time. We'll let you know on the Twitter. So that episode, we'll kind of recap. We'll just talk a little bit about week 0 if anything notable happens. But
like Georgia Tech upsetting Florida State.
Yeah, like if Georgia Tech upsets Florida State, maybe we'll talk about that a little bit. But we are going to talk Sunday. Are we doing playoffs on Sunday?
Playoff predictions on Sunday. We're working on our material for Monday to kind of get that in between until we get our picks next week.
Yes.
And we're going to go the whole way through the playoff, guys. We're going to take you from our 1 through 12, and then we're going to do matchups until we tell you our champion.
Yep. Monday to be determined, but we'll get the Minnesota, Rutgers, Illinois predictions in there since they're playing on Thursday. And then Thursday will be our picks episode, and it will be during that Minnesota UNC game. So come hang out with us, a little watch along. Yep. There'll probably be a lot of pauses because I'm posting up in front of the TV for that one.
I think also Ryan and I'd add intrigue to this. One of us, maybe Ryan will do it. We're going to keep track starting week 1 of our pick'ems all season, and at the end we will reveal to you who won and who lost.
The betting champ. I'll keep a spreadsheet and we'll tweet it out each week just so you guys can track along with us. Good times. All right, y'all. It's football time. Enjoy it this weekend. We made it. We're here. The wait is over. We did it.
Enjoy
Thanks for joining us again this evening. We'll see you guys on Sunday.
See you Sunday.